Welcome to another week of BWI Live, and you'd think beginning of June, we're in this dead period where on social media people are just arguing and posting highlights and stealing content, and there's not a lot to talk about, but this is the BWI Live show. That's not how we roll. There's always something to talk about. Once again, I put about 2 pounds worth of show into a 1 pound bucket, and we're going to get to as much of it as possible. Our experts today are going to be talking about all the various topics, including Penn State football recruiting, which is white hot right now with camps and with official visits and with a bunch of other things going on. Sean Fitz is going to handle that later in the show, and Nate Bauer is going to give you all the context you need on Penn State football recruiting. He's not a recruiting expert. No. He is our big picture expert here on the show. We'll be talking about maybe we'll get to some financial stuff today, maybe not. A couple things, though, before I get done with this ramble. I have to say these things or else I'll forget to say them. First thing is we're going with an earlier show on Thursday. We're going to be going at 9 a.m. with the recruiting show because Penn State football is opening up the Lash building, and we're going to have a good conversation with the staff. They're inviting the media in for their June press conference, essentially, catch up with us so we can have a conversation. That's happening on Thursday, just to give us a little more buffer so I can get my camera charged and over there. We're going to be doing the show at 9 a.m. Also, no Greg this week, so no wrestling show this week. So for those of you that have been enjoying the wrestling content, that's the news and notes to start the show. I'll try to remember to remind everybody else later on. But now that I got all that out of the way, Fitz, how you doing? Busy weekend for you. S-Zone came up yesterday. People should go read that at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. What's got the gears spinning for you as we start the show?
Great reminder on the Thursday show. Definitely totally remembered that. So I can't wait for 9 o'clock on Thursday. Busy weekend for Penn State, 20 official visitors, 16 of them committed. So, it was the big numbers, forest versus trees situation there, but still a positive weekend for Penn State. We talked about it yesterday in the S-Zone, how those things are going to probably play out. And I think Penn State's right on track now. It's turning into what we thought it would be, in that, you get guys like Joey O'Brien and Kari Adams on campus early, and then all of a sudden you've got to hold onto that rope and go through other visits, because other guys are going to visit other schools. Guess what? As a spoiler, they're going to love their visits. All the visits are going to be great.
Other schools aren't terrible, right?
Yeah,
other schools aren't the worst ever.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but you look at all over the board. There's going to be some fluctuation there, and like I said, with these top targets, there's a lot to think about, and there's a lot more to think about than there used to be. But there's a lot to think about, and there's going to be visit highs, and there's going to be RPMs, crystal balls, whatever have you, and that's all part of June. June's going to be wacky, so we're gonna see that play out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, as I'm interested to see just generally the conversation last year was speed is expensive. And I just meant that as a shortcut to the best players at the most important positions. They're going to command a high price. And we're going to see how Penn State's able to do, because they've got a lot of great players coming. And we're going to talk about that on Fitz's recruiting update in just a little bit.
And Frank, that hasn't been thrown back in your face at all in the last year, right? The speed is expensive line.
Don't think so.
Okay, good.
And if it has, I haven't paid attention, so it's fine.
Well,
Nate,
that's perfect.
How you doing today?
I'm great. I have to correct you right off the top.
Okay.
It's an Ed DeChellis-ism, and it is 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack.
Yeah.
No, I'm aware. I like to adapt those idioms to my own needs. I find the rote cliche of the same thing over and over again boring, so I try to mix it up a little bit. It's why I'm so darn charming, Nate. You've got your boyish charms. I've got my quirk. And Fitz has got his just aura.
Beard. He's got his beard.
I was trying not to say beard, but he's got the thing going on. He knows what I'm talking about.
Listen, this is a Penn State show. We will honor and respect Ed DeChellis at every opportunity that we can. And in fact, just saw Ed DeChellis a few days ago with the Coaches versus Cancer. Yeah. Looks very good.
Nice. How was that, by the way? We should talk about that. How were the efforts to raise money for cancer research?
Yeah, I mean, they just do such a bang up job every year. And, obviously I'm proud, privileged, happy to be part of it and help them in their cause to fight cancer that happens to include a round of golf. So it's a win-win, I think, for everybody in what they do. And really what it's become is kind of this unofficial reunion weekend for Penn State basketball. So more, I think, from the span that I have covered Penn State football basketball over the last 20 years, more returning players than I think I've ever seen at that event. So good to see, and a good time, I think, had by all.
We've got a question from Z-Man in the chat, basketball. And yes, we will have a little bit in the BWI mailbag concerning the latest happenings with the Penn State basketball program, which are, I think, rather significant based on the headlines that Nate has been putting out lately, or at least he's been writing. The program has been putting them out. But the biggest thing did not happen this week for Penn State football in terms of newsy news, and that is the Whiteout 2025 has an official date, time, and opponent. It's all locked in. So Nate, take us through what we learned last week from the television executives ready to make their decree about what time Penn State fans are going to get to watch their favorite team in September.
Yeah, we learned that Penn State lucked into, right? Because let's make this clear, Penn State lucked into its best home game of the season being the fourth best game of the Big Ten calendar, right? That's the bottom line. Is Ohio State is getting just like
blitzed,
vice grip in the purgatory known as Big Noon kickoff, right? So like Ohio State will live in Big Noon territory this year, and because of Ohio State. And by the way, one of those games includes Penn State, Ohio State, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, and Ohio State, Penn State are all going to find that locale for TV viewing. And so because of that leaves Penn State's game with Oregon to be an NBC kick, I believe at 7:30. And so as a result, the thing that James Franklin, I mean, obviously we talked about this all last year. I had an interview with Franklin around this time, and he was making arguments, hey, like, defend this Big Ten, right? Like, Big Ten vouch for this on behalf of one of your marquee programs, that Penn State fans want the whiteout game, right? That you want to have the whiteout game, and you want it to be against the best opponent of the season, right? And so because of those combinations and having it at night, Penn State just hasn't been able to do it because its games over the last 4 years really have been locked into that Big Noon category for Ohio State and Michigan, right? Just every single year, Ohio State or Michigan has fallen into that window. And this year it's Oregon, as opposed, right? Penn State doesn't have Michigan on the schedule this year. So Penn State gets Oregon, and it fell to NBC, and NBC snapped it up, and here they are.
Fitz, importance of having that primetime whiteout, and I'll add early in the year where maybe it'll be rainy, but generally chance to have great weather.
Never a better time for a whiteout than the last weekend in September. I've always felt that way. They've had some great ones over the years in terms of the confluence of weather and scheduling, and just everything works out. Usually, I mean, the Iowa game a couple years ago was, I think that was either October 1st or September 30th, something like that. And it rained. It did rain, but like usually you have a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to host recruits. So I think that's going to be a big one on the schedule, especially when you look at how Penn State's schedule sets up. I mean, we got last year, Ryan and I had often talked to recruits, and they said they'd be in the whiteout and they just assumed it was Ohio State. Well, the whiteout ended up not being Ohio State, but that's the marquee one. I mean, you circle that one and then you double circle it because it is a whiteout. So there's going to be no confusion as to what the in-demand marquee game is going to be this year. It's going to be a big one for Penn State. It's going to be more future focused as usual. I mean, all the official visits are getting taken care of, and there are a couple of guys that will be up for official visits. They've already said they're going to come up for official visits for the Oregon game. But you look at what Penn State's trying to accomplish, and it's mostly forward focused. It's mostly going to be those committed guys in the 2026 class, and then 27, 28, 20. As much as I hate to say it, 29 as well. So we're getting to that territory.
Nate, when it comes to the actual game and the impact of having it at night and the whole atmosphere from a program wide perspective, is it a I guess a tangibly better impact having it at night? with all the factors involved. Is because I know we make a big deal of it in terms of the showcase of the program. Is there a bigger market? Is there a bigger opportunity for the program generally when it's on primetime?
Is there a bigger opportunity?
I'm not social clips look better. Like the whiteout at night looks better.
Well, I think the argument is how many right? Like, what's the viewership of a noon Ohio State game versus the viewership of, and like, I don't think we're going to find out until this year, right? Because you're not going to have those direct comp. Like the last marquee night whiteout against a marquee opponent was Michigan in 2019. So, right, that's a while ago now.
Yeah.
So getting that opportunity to see how those viewership numbers stack up, sure. But look, it's James Franklin has talked about it before. Other people around the program have talked about it before. The whole idea is the buildup. So yes, there are the visuals. Yes, there's all of the in-person stuff. The fireworks look better.
Yeah.
At
7:30. There's a reason it's our background. There's a reason it's beautiful. It looks like this if you're watching on the YouTube channel.
It's not about that. The ratings, they matter, but you're not tuning in for a 3.5 hour commercial. You're viewing that in segments. I mean, we do that with the show. Like, a lot of people will not watch an hour of the show, but if T. Frank clips up 2-minute clips, they're going to watch it. They're going to consume it that way. That's the way we consume things now. So doing it in that sense. And, Nate, we had a guy that was shooting video for the Blue White game, and he put together a Blue White game montage that made the Blue White game look pretty exciting. That stuff helps. So when you're talking about branding the program, hey, the student section is not going to be like insane for 60 minutes straight. Like, there's going to be times when you have to take a breath, but you can do those clips and you can make it seem like this is like all over you all the time.
Yeah.
Snowfall, whatever you want to call it, avalanche
and they're there.
And that's not me ragging on the student section. That is like it's really hard to uphold that for 3.5 hours. But when you put it into clips and you put it on Twitter, you put it on Instagram, you put it on TikTok, you put it wherever, that's the stuff that's valuable in building your program. And when guys are on campus visiting, they're seeing a montage. They're not seeing a game film, like that's what you look at in terms of building and recruiting.
And speaking of social cachet, which is very hard. And Nate, I gave you a tough question generally of like, hey, what is the social impact of a noon versus a 7:30 game? I don't think that there's a whole lot of ambivalence about this one because this is pretty dope. Saquon Barkley is going to be the cover athlete of Madden 26. Of course, his backwards leap over a Jacksonville defender is the iconic moment of the 2024 season. He was the player of 2024, I'd say, just generally. I don't want to ask just a dry, like, Fitz, what's the importance of recruiting with Saquon Barkley? But like, this is pretty cool, right? Like, just for everybody involved, this is a pretty cool moment, right?
Absolutely. If you're Penn State, you chip away at cool because this is a program that's not viewed as a cool program. It's one that has worked a great deal in going in the right direction. But when you have things like this, when you have a guy like Saquon who represents Penn State the way that he does and has Saquon at the top of the AP Offensive Player of the Year odds on FanDuel, you've got Micah Parsons at the top of the defensive. You've got Abdul Carter at the top of the Defensive Rookie of the Year odds. Like, these things are the things that matter in terms of development, which is Penn State's message. And I mean, this is part of a greater usefulness for Penn State to expose all these guys and to say that, hey, those three guys that I just named, they're all Pennsylvania guys. Like, all these things come together. It's not by accident that these guys are having success and that these guys are making it. And that's part of the pitch. And yes, it is chipping away at being a cool program, which coolness matters sometimes. Some kids doesn't matter to other kids, but you'd like to matter to everyone, right? Yeah.
Just every little incremental win you can have, as you've talked about, and as James Franklin talked about, win on all fronts. Winning on the cool front is difficult because that's not necessarily your decision. What is cool is also one of those subjective things. Nate, you get a Really easy assignment. Now I want you to tell me about beer in our weekly Antifragile update.
Oh man, that sounds great. Yeah, Antifragile is our sponsor of this show. They have been for a while now, and they deliver the best beer in State College. And actually, segment side note, the guys that I was golfing with on Friday were from Du Bois, I believe, and they talked about coming into State College and how they always have a good time, and they, it's just a different vibe and a good time. And I will not mention the places that they said they had fun at. I was like, okay, that's fine. Check out Antifragile, right? Give it a look. And I believe they may have done that after the round on Friday, and I believe they may have enjoyed themselves. It is just again, the best beer in State College. It is locally crafted. It is not Coors Light. I'm sorry, Greg Pickle, but it is the good stuff, and the varieties that they present, are always good. So yeah, Antifragile, thank you so much. And obviously John's, the cheesesteak shop out front, is great as well. Best cheesesteak in state. Like, lots of bests. I hate superlatives, but it's true in this case.
And we're not the only people that are saying this, by the way. They are a sponsor here on the show, but this is kind of a universally agreed upon thing, Fitz. They have some of the best beer and some of the best cheesesteaks.
Fitz loves beer.
Yeah, I do. It's true. You got me.
And he likes it. So yeah, anyway. Okay. All
right. Beautiful transition. What we're going to do is we're going to simplify this, and we are going to get to Fitz's recruiting update. So Nate, get out of here. Get out of here. We're gonna talk about some football recruiting, which, as I said earlier in the show, this is silly of me. You are our recruiting expert, so I don't know why I'm kicking you off the show. But we're gonna get to Fitz's recruiting update right now because it was a very busy weekend and a lot of things to get to. We got to Fitz's recruiting update here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. As always, it's helpful to get all the information from Fitz and from Ryan Snyder as we get through prospect camp and official visits are happening, and we're going to have RPMs and breaking news and committed things like that. You can get all that information first and foremost at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, the mothership, the hub, the home of all Penn State football recruiting news that you need to know about. You can sign up right now for just $1. That's for the first week to try us out. And this is a pretty big week to do that because there's going to be some big recruiting this weekend, which we're actually going to get to first. And then we're going to talk about what happened this past weekend, because what happens next is always the most important thing with news in general. And it's a big one this weekend for Penn State football because the official visit this weekend is stacked with some of the most important, some of the most impactful players that Penn State is recruiting in 2026. So Fitz, what's going on this weekend? Tell us a little bit more about those players coming up on Friday and Saturday.
We're actually going to take a step back because there were 4 guys that were on campus over the weekend. So 4 uncommitted guys in addition to the 16. So that it's a big weekend, even though it's not the sexy, juicy, whatever. I shouldn't put those words back to back, but not the weekend that you're looking for all kinds of things to happen because they're committed guys. But a very important weekend in the process for those committed prospects. And then you add 4 guys on top of that. Looking at the list, you kind of break them down. Marlon Bright and Marky Walbridge, the 2 offensive linemen. Marlon Bright, we thought might be a guy that pulled the trigger this weekend in terms of making that commitment. He's had a date set for July 5th for a long time. Seems to be sticking to that, but I don't think we've changed our thoughts on that. I put a pick in for him recently. Ryan's had a pick in. Steve Wilfong at On 3 has had a pick in as well. So it's been one of those things where we expect him to end up at Penn State. And I really haven't changed my thoughts on that. Marky Walbridge is an interesting guy. He's probably one of the quieter prospects in the class of 2026 that Penn State's after, but he's also pretty high on the board for Penn State, and they would love to get him across the line. Of course, they've got Kevin Brown and Roseby Lubintis so far in the offensive line class. Just mentioned Marlon Bright. There's some more things coming down the pike as well, but Marky Walbridge, an important target for Penn State. Michigan is right in there. Alabama is in there, but this is a guy that Penn State would like to continue to push forward for. I think they did some good work this weekend, but as one of those quieter guys, Is he all that upfront with other prospects, coaches, anybody, media, or anything like that? Not really. So taking what we've learned about him, I think there's positives there, but also, treading lightly because he's a quiet guy. Penn State brought in a couple linebackers in Kosi Okpala and Rodney Colton. Southern guys, tough sells in the beginning to begin with. Excuse me. Okpala is an interesting one because I think he's really, really interested in Penn State in terms of what it could be, but also he's from Texas and Texas wants him. As a tough sell for Penn State. Not just a tough sell, but it's going to be tough for anybody to get him out of Texas. So that's wrapping that up. And moving on to this weekend. And T. Frank, you asked me in the rundown, is this the, all caps, weekend of the summer? For Deion Barnes, it is. I mean, you look at what Penn State has coming in, and there's a bunch of guys listed on our site at Blue Whale Illustrated of guys that are going to come in, and right away what jumps to the front is that defensive line group. Penn State has a couple defensive linemen in this class. Daniel Jennings has reclassified from 2026. So you've got a couple defensive tackles, but with the region being as it is, and that's what we've preached all cycle, you got to close on some of these guys, and this is going to be the opportunity. You got Luke Wafel coming in, Carter Meadows coming in. Those guys are in 5-star territory on 3, top of the board type guys. I mean, just excellent prospects in every regard. Different prospects, which we've sort of parsed on here before. But you've got an opportunity for a couple of your top targets at defensive end to come in, but you've also got Jackson Ford coming in, who we talked to last week at the Under Armour camp. You got Tyson Harley, Carter Meadows' teammate at Gonzaga. He's a really good prospect as well. Keyshawn Eliezer from North Carolina. I mean, just like that's just the edge room. And there's a lot of defensive tackles visiting this weekend. Damari Simeon, top of the board. Titan Davis, top of the board. Keyshawn Stansel, top of the board.
Yeah.
Whew, man, I'm running out of air for this weekend, and I think Deion Barnes is going to feel the same way on Sunday. So it's a very important weekend on that defensive line. I mean, that all the chips are in this weekend. It's going to be very interesting to see if there is some sort of domino effect. I'm not sure that that's the case because of the way that this schedule is set to unfold, because you've got other official visits coming, and these guys are top of the board targets for, Luke Wafel was at Ohio State last week, and Carter Meadows is top of the board for Michigan, Ohio State, South Carolina. There are so many options for these guys because they are so good, and now it's time to close. That is a situation that, I don't know how it's going to play out. Somebody asked me on the board last week, why no RPM for Jackson Ford? It's like, I'm not sure how all this stuff is going to play out. What are we going to say? 3 defensive ends. You want to take 2 more defensive tackles, something along those lines, because those guys are available. They are in your region. And as I said before, it's time to close. So we will see how Penn State reacts to this weekend. I think it's going to be positive. I don't know if it's going to be an immediate impact immediate returns type positive. But it's going to be fascinating to see how all this plays out.
One of the reasons I asked that is just generally the importance of the trenches and, the players that are visiting and the opportunity, I guess, that's ahead of Penn State with so many of these high quality, borderline or indirect 5-star players, even though I don't know there are all 32 5-stars are out yet for on 3. I guess just kind of a broader question. How do you place more importance on defensive line prospects like these and the defensive line in general? The edge rusher where Penn State's been very good. There's an opportunity to take another step with that, with a guy, especially I think like Luke Wafel, who has just a different body type and has the size where Penn State's been recruiting these guys that are maybe a little bit smaller, but those elite speed rushers, having the ability to show more on film if we can develop a guy like Denine Sutton or Luke Wafel. The question's getting away from me. I guess I'm just trying to put in the context of how important are defensive line commits and prospects to you when assessing the success or failure of a class?
I think it's pretty important because you look at what the bulk of your class is going to be. It's going to be offensive and defensive line, just because that's where you got to stack bodies in terms of getting guys in that can potentially turn into something. And Penn State's done that a lot. Like you look at, we said last year was a sort of a weaker edge class in the region, and they ended up signing 4 of them. 4 or 5, because you include Deshaun Burnett in that. Those original linebacker. Cortez Harris was in there. Chaz Coleman. You got and Ivan Kemaju, who we thought was going to be an interior guy, is now defensive end. So, this is 2 separate conversations because I feel great about the young talent on Penn State's defensive line. Yeah. Now it's about stacking those guys up because this is your opportunity. 2026 is a class. Penn State is coming off of back-to-back first-round draft picks for defensive ends. I know Abdul Carter's listed as a linebacker, so back-to-back edge rushers in the first round. Had Adisa a couple years ago. Denied Dennis Sutton is there right now with the opportunity to maybe move into the first round. So this is an iron is hot situation, and this is sort of I said it before, and somebody commented in the chat here, a confluence of Penn State's got a ton of success. Deion Barnes has a bunch of juice right now, and the region is stocked with top level potential pass rushers and defensive tackles when you include Simeon and maybe Stansel. Stansel's really not in the region, but he's been a guy that's been up a couple times. So this is your opportunity to capitalize on everything that is going your way. Haven't looked too deeply into 2027, but 2026 seems like a high watermark in terms of that. You got to capitalize.
Yeah. It's funny. Penn State's been trying, I think, to make North Carolina, like, Virginia, then bleed into North Carolina to be part of the region. It's been a little bit more difficult there with some of the recent interest, but not pushing guys across the line. Anything else from this particular weekend you want to highlight? Because I know that there's a lot from the prospect camp that you and I were at on Sunday that we still need to get to here on the update. So any last thoughts here about what's coming with the official visits?
Big weekend, but no, we can move into camp real quick.
Okay, great. Again, we'll talk more about this on Thursday on the recruiting show, so make sure you check that out live 10 a.m. here on YouTube. So let's talk about Ben Izuka, who was this year's Peter Gonzalez or Braz Thomas, who came to Penn State's first camp of the season and had to prove that he needed to be included in the class of 2026. So take us through, I guess that's the setup. Take us through the journey that Ben Izuka has been on to get to this point and how yesterday went.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. Yeah, I'll keep it brief because it might not be the last time we talk about him today. But you look at this aspects that are on that line or have some final questions. He came to camp last year at the end of July, got an offer, but 325 pounds, like on a 6'3" frame. It's a lot of weight to carry. And so you want to see improvement from a body composition standpoint. You want to see improvement from an athleticism standpoint. So now he's down 30 pounds and he's a half second faster in the 40. Like that's the kind of progress that you want to see. And then you put him up against the defensive line group, which was okay, nothing special in terms of the camp that they had over the weekend. Good 2027 D tackle, and then a 2028 defensive tackle that played end that they offered as well. So like an okay group, but there was no question who the star of the one-on-ones were, and that was Ben Izuka. He was playing center. He's probably a center at the next level. Center guard, whatever you want to say. He's long enough to play guard, but like he looks like a squatty typical center in the sense that Squatty now is 6'3". So, but he was very good in terms of his feet. He won the Under Armour Offensive Line MVP award in Ohio earlier this year. He's always been a good player. It's just you got questions about how that makeup goes and where Penn State stands in terms of recruiting that board, because that is such a massive board. But Izuka came in, did a really good job. James Franklin put him through the gauntlet. I don't think T. Frank, you were standing there. Did he lose a rep that we saw?
He lost. No, I wouldn't say he outright lost. There was maybe one that you saw where he kind of got pushed back into where the quarterback would be, but he never straight up lost a rep.
Yeah, he was pretty darn good in terms of camp performances by offensive linemen. One of the better ones that we've seen so far. So Ben Izuka, it was sort of camping for his life from a Penn State perspective, and I think he did pretty well.
Because we were following Izuka, we were following the offensive line broadly, and I know that we both had our thoughts about what we saw from some of those young players. What did you see from the rest of the offensive line when kind of profiling this story as we watched it unfold on Sunday afternoon?
I'm curious who your favorite offensive lineman was. I know who mine was, but I want to hear you say his name.
I just call him Olu 2.0 or O2. I'm shortening it down to just O2 because I've never heard his name said out loud before.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Oluboboba. I just butchered that, and I'm looking at it. It's not my thing. I'm from Franklin County. I'm sorry, but it's a great performance by the tackle from North Jersey. He looks the part. About 6'6", 250, 260 now. Saw him at Under Armour in New Jersey, and he was fantastic. He was good there. He was fantastic on Sunday. Looks the part of a left tackle. I've compared him, T-Frank, when we've talked before, I've compared him to a Drew Shelton type build. He's just got that long, lean build that will add more weight. The feet are good. He continues to progress every time that I've seen him, or at least the last 2 times we've seen him. And I think, I think James Franklin would like another Olu. I think that's an easy little crutch for him to fall upon to go with Olu, and he was terrific on Saturday. Leighton Von Brandt was there, the Penn State commit. He was playing more right tackle than anything, but I think Olu was one that kind of stole the show in terms of that offensive line group.
Yeah, but it was good to see Leighton Von Brandt get better, I think, in some certain areas. And this is one of the beauties, I think, that has the culture of Penn State offensive linemen that commit, especially when they commit early, is not just that, great, I'm a commit, and I'm just going to like ride the fame of wherever I am in the recruiting rankings. And they work to get better. They come to Penn State camps and work with Phil Trautwein to improve so that they aren't learning everything from him the first time when they get there as freshmen. So the progress, I think, is a tangible thing that we've seen Cooper Cousins do this, and other Penn State offensive linemen. Caleb Brewer has done these things to make sure that you hit the ground running. And it's an interesting thing to watch the progression of these guys getting better over time from where they are as super talented prospects. And I think Olu Babola is a very good prospect in that sense of he was a very raw prospect. You listening to some of the guys talk about him, and Cooper Cousins was there basically as like a second offensive line coach, working with some of the guys in the background, talking about Babola and his natural ability for the position. He is a already 38th overall player nationally in the On3 rankings, 190th for 247, and 84th overall for ESPN. 38th overall, excuse me if I said that wrong, for ESPN. So a guy that's a consensus 2027 target. You've already got one of the top 2027 offensive linemen in the class so far with Leighton Von Brandt. So looks like Penn State is in a good position for another strong draft class, recruiting class with Phil Trautwein next recruiting cycle.
Now, I will say he is at St. Peter's Prep, and Penn State has struggled in that conference in terms of landing guys out of that conference. They've made some strides in the last couple of years, but till you break through there, that's a question mark that we will have. Of course, Malachi Goodman came from Paramus Catholic last year. Jameer Joseph from St. Joe's Regional. So like they've had success in some North Jersey private schools, but they haven't broken into all of them. So we will see if he keeps making it back to campus. A good sign that he wanted to come on the first day or the first weekend or whatever of summer camps to get to Penn State to work with Phil Trautwein. Yeah. You look at you made a really interesting point here. We watched Leighton Von Brandt. We watched this offensive line group the closest because that was the best position group I thought there on Saturday. Sure. But like just sort of like the light going on moments where Phil Trautwein makes a little adjustment or something that looks little, and then he looks like a completely different player in terms of dropping back into pass protection or something like that. And you just see these little moments of the light going on, and that is a positive to me because you know that they can improve on fundamentals, that they can improve on a lot of things, but just some of those little things that maybe they don't even realize they're doing, and then all of a sudden it gets corrected. These camps are huge for the future of Penn State's offensive line. And it's not just because they're going to find guys that they can add to the group like a Zazuka or something like that, but these kids keep coming back to work with Phil Trautwein, to work with Bill Cusert, the guys that are there. Frank Leonard is missed. His voice is missed, obviously. But you look at the opportunity that they have. Kevin Brown told me he's going to camp 5 times in June. That's pretty impressive and speaks to the mindset of what they're trying to hammer home with these guys. So you'd like to see Roseby Lubinis get up here. You'd even like to see Marlon Bright come back for a camp or something like that. So this is part of the fabric of what they've been going with on the offensive line. And it seems to have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's a huge advantage. And it's genuinely one of my favorite parts of the year is because we get a little bit closer. We get a little bit up close to see. We get to watch the Penn State coaches coach. And like, I'm not an athlete, but I'm understanding what they're saying. And I can see tangibly what they're trying to correct. And it's really impressive the way that they can communicate it both physically and verbally so that the player doesn't just get the coaching, they get the coaching.
Right. And you look, and everybody's going to say Cooper Cousins, but the guy that really just kind of exploded as a prospect during this time was Anthony Donka. Like he was a guy that was like Cooper has always been good. Like he ascended at the end of the cycle because he got on the national stage and he went to the Army game and did wonderful things down in San Antonio. But Donko was raw and he developed so much and improved so much as a player at these camps. And I think that that's a massive thing. And he was the one that ended up, ascending out of that class of 2023. Yeah. So sorry, they all run together at this point. So,
right.
But no, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And I can't wait to see Kevin Brown because I tell you what, those pictures he posted over the weekend, he is filling out and he looks like a guy that I think is a 5-star, which I'm going to keep hammering home. I sent Charles Power the pictures and I was just like, all right, buddy, it's time to stop dropping. So,
yeah. It's a good sign that Penn State was able to get some of those players to camp, including Olu Baboa, because at the same time, there was an Under Armour camp in Baltimore, which Ryan Snyder attended, which is some of the context of why Penn State's offensive line group maybe was the best unit overall, with some of those skilled players, especially going down to, and defensive line players going down to Baltimore. So we're going to get into that on the Thursday show. This has been an extended Fitz's recruiting update because of all the information going on. Basically, a mini recruiting show before the big recruiting show, which comes up on Thursday. So make sure you subscribe and check out that after you get done with this video.
One more, Keemon Spell was there, the Penn State running back commit. I watched him for a couple minutes and I just said, yep, he's really good. And then I moved on to the offensive line. I probably should have taken video, of course. But no, he's really good. I cannot wait to see him on the field this fall. Great tape to begin with as a sophomore. He's just going to keep getting better, I think. And he's ranked highly for a reason. And I hope to see him again in another camp, just because it was very apparent who the Division I Big Ten running back was in that running back group.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we'll make sure we get you more of that context throughout the season with more recruiting camps, 7-on-7s coming up during June. It's a very busy time of year for Penn State football recruiting. So there's always something to talk about here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, because it helps out so much with us being able to bring this information to you on a weekly basis. Let's get to better or worse. We're finally going to be wrapping up our look at the Penn State football roster for 2025 going into the season. Did they get better or worse at key positions? And today we're taking a look at the secondary, and I'm including the linebackers in that because, of course, they play in pass coverage. Nate Bauer, our esteemed reporter, is back after an extended break. That one went a little long, but it was great information.
It's
so,
fine.
Nate, I'm going to give you the floor. And you're going to take maybe my most intriguing position on the Penn State defense. That's not really a stretch here. Linebacker. I started this game thinking about the linebacker. So better or worse in 2025?
Worse.
Okay.
But with caveats.
That's a first for you.
Yeah, I know. You can't believe it. I think Tony Rojas is going to be good this year, honestly. Like, considerably good.
I can't tell if I'm happy that I'm not out on this ledge publicly anymore, or if I just want to box you out and take all the room.
No, don't you dare. I'm going to sing it from the mountaintops.
Good.
That I think anytime a guy like that has the preseason, cyclone of like, oh, there's a guy that does everything the right way, practices so hard, takes weight training really seriously, right? All of those things that lead to success, and then doesn't have the season that you're anticipating, says something happened, right? And then the proof is
in the postseason.
Yeah,
right?
The proof is the sling after the season, right? When Tony Rojas shows up to Rec Hall for the basketball game, and everybody finally gets to see what the result of off-season surgery looks like. So, yes, I just think that trajectory is there for him to be not just good, but yes, falls into understands things right better, like knowing where to be, when to be there, but then also brings that athleticism and playmaking, the timeliness of his playmaking, I think he can put that on the field, and it will be, I think, the height, right? The ceiling of Penn State's potential at linebacker will be better than it was last year. It's just a matter of what does the normal look like?
Not even the floor,
not the floor, the normal.
Okay.
Right. Because if Amari Campbell and Dom DeLuca have to, right, there's some stuff there to figure out. How does all that shuffle out, and what's the end result of it?
Fitz, better or worse linebackers?
I'm gonna go with worse. I think we will not understand the value of having Kobe King out there until we see it. I mean, he was a really number one, a really good player for Penn State, but also a good leader, a guy that can put people in position to do things. And I will say that I think Jim Knowles will put the linebackers in a better position to do things. So we won't see Kobe King flanked out wide, covering a wide receiver. Not bitter about that at all. Penn State fans are not. I think you got a different situation here in that not only do you lose Kobe King, but you also lost Tyler Elsdon. And just hang with me on this before you shout me down. Those were your two green dot guys. Those were the guys running the defense from the middle of the defense. So you have to figure out that communication. Penn State struggled with it early last year. You have to figure out the communication with the new guy, whomever that may be, whether that's Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca, whomever may have that green dot on their helmet. It's going to be a change. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be bad. It's going to be a change. So we will see what happens. Replacing that experience, replacing that voice in the middle. Of course, Dan Connor is the guy that's going to be relaying, or the guy that was the guy that relayed it last year. So I think that's going to be a situation that's worth monitoring. The depth took a hit with Tamir Robinson, and you get Amari Campbell back. So is probably a wash, maybe a little bit toward Penn State because Amari Campbell seems more ready to go than Robinson was at that point. But I think depth is going to be a conversation ongoing. Keon Wiley's coming off that injury. I think he will be better than we saw this spring because he's going to go through the summer, get more confident in that knee, and all of a sudden be okay. So I think they're fine. I don't see a big jump or anything like that, or a big drop off, or anything like that. But it's going to be plenty of questions at linebacker. I still feel.
Yeah, I just, for all the reasons that you laid out there, I'm going to say better, because last year when Dom DeLuca got hurt, Tony Rojas also got hurt. Tony Rojas could not come out of the game because they didn't have any other players that could come in for him. This year, you bring in Amari Campbell, and as you mentioned, you've got to expect more out of Keon Wiley in an optimistic sense, but also in a realistic sense. If this is a guy, both of you guys are talking about a guy that was buzzing before he got hurt, and a guy who, has been a positive force behind the scenes for Penn State football over the last couple of years. Tony, I wish. Here's the problem. Let me back up. When I watch the film, I can't show you these things because I follow the rules. I know there are people that, post all 22 clips on social media and on YouTube, and I'm not trying to call anybody out for that whatsoever. There's nothing illegal about doing that. Where I get my information and the way I do things, it's like, hey, don't share this with anybody. Don't share the video source. So I don't do that. I respect the rules. But I watched Tony Rojas intentionally take on blocks with the wrong shoulder, because every time he took them with the correct shoulder, he got lit up because he could not use one of his shoulders, and he played football. Not only that, he was still a borderline elite coverage player in that situation. You take all those things, you put them together of a healthy, I think still the potential to be a superstar at the position, like a genuine superstar linebacker, not somebody who is a hybrid player. Because for all we talk about Abdul Carter and Micah Parsons, those guys were defensive ends masquerading as linebackers for a while. Tony Rojas is a linebacker where coverage is part of his DNA. I think, this is a positive projection of some of his tackling issues being associated with the shoulder. I think there's the potential for him to still have an issue tackling if he's going for lights out, knockout hits. That's fair. But I think the run defense in general is going to be better. It's also going to be better because they're going to ask less of those linebackers to knife through holes and make aggressive plays. They are going to be playing more of contain the run and spill things out and make tackles when they're available. So maybe it doesn't look like they're better, but overall, I think the linebacker room from a depth perspective, and as you guys have pointed out, the positive upside of this potential, the ceiling of this group, I think is raised. So I'm just taking both of your positive points and I'm bringing them together because I think that on the whole, you lose that really stable force in Kobe King. And I think that's the biggest variable you guys are right about. Outside of that, like I think there's positivity here from scheme to communication, literally getting the play calls in correctly, which was an issue for the first month of the season last year. I think all of these things are going to be a much better improvement for whoever is that middle linebacker and then the rest of the team. Nate, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, they're thin.
Yeah.
And somebody always gets hurt. So I just, there's kind of laws of inevitability in college football. And, I'm not saying it will necessarily hit the linebackers. I think that the performance of the defensive line has a massive impact.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. What does no Abdul Carter versus Abdul Carter mean for that group? How much did he help them last season? How much did the defensive tackles help in terms of clogging running lanes? So yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm not. I do think that the high end, like I said, can be better. It's just a matter of what is the every down in, down out look like out of that group.
Maybe the second most interesting, and I think the most important position on the defense is a safety room. So Fitz, I'm going to come to you for this one. Better or worse, start us off, the safety position, better or worse than 2024?
We're definitely worse than they went into 2024. But then KJ Winston got hurt, so it evened out a little bit, but I'll still go worse. Jalen Reed, taking away a heartbeat of a defense is, that's bad. Not bad in that they can't overcome it because Key Wheatley can become that guy, but also it takes a lot to replace a guy like Jalen Reed, a talent like KJ Winston. So you just have too many questions at that point to call him better at this point. That's what I'm going in for. Zakee Wheatley, I think, is going to have a fantastic season. I think he's going to lead the team in snaps, tackles, pops, whatever else comes out there. I think he's really going to be the most consistent, or going to have to be the most consistent player on this defense, because you're putting him beside somebody that's going to not have a ton of experience, whether it's Dejan Lane, whether it's King Mack. You're going to have to find a replacement there. And I think Penn State not moving away from the 3 safety look, because it is still 4-2-5, but I think you're going to see more corner than safety, than three corner looks than 3 safety looks. So I just don't know how you can look at it and say it's going to be better after losing the talent that they lost.
Nate, better or worse at safety?
Well, now I just want to contradict you, Fitz, because
Perfect.
You said it up there. I think that a full season of Zakee Wheatley as the form that took shape in the playoff is really good and better than what they had last season.
Careful. I might use the word boundary safety if you keep going there, Nate.
Don't do that. I'll get confused.
Sorry. Continue.
No, I think that his opportunity, the way that he's seized this offseason, the way that he did last year, it just sets him up for a really, really good season. And, again, wasn't the conversation last year that, yes, Jalen Reed had to make sacrifices in his performance based on what happened with KJ. I don't know how this is going to shake out in terms of positionally what Zakee is going to have to do. But if he can be in his best spot and be utilized by Jim Knowles appropriately, right, to accentuate his best because of the other guys being healthy that he's complimented by, I think they can be pretty good back there.
Fitz, follow-up question on this particular conversation about Zakee Wheatley. And I agree that the conversation should center around him because I'm reasonably certain, after seeing what we've witnessed in the spring, knowing what I know about Jim Knowles' defense, they're going to build the defense around Wheatley and that position specifically. So Do you think he's the type of player that merits that, considering the last person that they built the defense around in this style was Caleb Downs? And, it's hard not to have that comparison of this defense really worked at Ohio State in part because Caleb Downs was special. And Wheatley has special qualities as a football player, but that's a super high bar. And I am trying to make the comparison specifically because it is important, I think, to the context of this conversation.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think there's elements of that. I don't think you can get the whole sort of book thrown at him as Caleb Downs. I mean, just Caleb Downs is the best defensive player in college football. I mean,
probably.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to fill that. Now, I'm saying worse in the sense that we said the worst doesn't have to do with Tony Rojas at linebacker. The worst doesn't have to do with Zakee Wheatley at safety. Like you're looking at everything as a whole, and Penn State, whether they play 2 safeties, 3 safeties, is going to take a hit in terms of experience, in terms of talent. I think they're plenty athletic. I mean, I'm as big a fan as Dejon Lane as anyone. But it's one of those things where he's going to have to grow up very fast on the fly, and they were hoping that he would continue to do that in spring. And I think he did do that in spring, but also it's a big jump to get where he was to where he needs to be, because there's no in between that's going to make that there's no learning curve there. Like that's going to be tough for him to do. And then King Mack all of a sudden comes back in and again, plenty athletic, playmaker, does a lot of things great, but how is that year at Alabama going to, what kind of player is he now compared to what he could have been if he stayed? I mean, that's the big questions that I have. And then you go down the depth chart and you've got guys that certainly can turn into good players. It's just, there's just that gap. I mean, it's all over Penn State's defense. You've got Zane Durant, and then you've got everybody else. You've got Dennis Sutton. You got Zariah Fisher in there as well that people forget about. And then you got everyone else. You got Tony Rojas, then everyone else. You've got Zakee Wheatley, then everyone else. Corners, not so much. But it's just kind of the theme that you see, that it is a rebuild. It is a restocking, if you will, at those positions. So you're not going to be fully confident in all of them until you can get out there and go with it. And hey, Zakee Wheatley can have an All-American year. He can have an All-Big Ten year. He can do all these special things that if you build around him, and he can continue to do the little intangibles that he does, which is find the football. And also, he's become a better tackler than we saw earlier in his career. So he's got a lot of things going for him. It's just a stretch for Jim Knowles to get the most out of this inexperienced group in addition to the stars that he has.
Okay, so you led us perfectly into that, talking about cornerbacks. That's our last group here on defense, better or worse. The chat is in shambles because we've gone 0 for 2 so far. Nate, is there some positivity around the corner with cornerbacks, better or worse?
Yeah, better. Sure. Better.
Oh my God! Can we reheat that tea? That was some tepidness. That's some lukewarm water you just fed us.
I think AJ here. Everybody expects AJ to be fantastic, which I think is good for Penn State, right? Look at the guys that they lost. Cam Miller did not end his career at Penn State well, and right, it's kind of an understatement. And Jalen Kimber was good. He was consistent. And I think that losing that hurts a little bit. But if Audavian Collins is the guy who has been spoken about in really not hushed tones for 2 years now, but specifically last year, then they're in business. I think that no matter kind of who comes out of that, who is paired opposite AJ, you would just think that the competition level gives Penn State an opportunity to be pretty good there and consistent. And specifically, again, which is something that ties in really with the safeties. What is the lacking a word here, the proportion of backbreaking mistakes versus splash play, game-changing, good stuff, right? I mean, interceptions, forced fumbles, that kind of stuff versus you're the last line of defense and you get beat, right? And I think that the potential this season for game-changing stuff is maybe a little bit higher than it was last year for the entirety of the back end of the defense, simply based on KJ, right? Like that element shifted in his absence in a way that I think this year, if healthy, with those stars, more playmaking can take place.
Fitz, what do you think?
Yeah, I think better. You did not even mention Elliott Washington and Zion Tracy, and I think Zion Tracy is going to be a very important part of this defense. He missed the spring after some cleanup, and he's a guy that you look at as a potential, I don't want to say difference maker, but a potential starter as the nickel there, which is going to be an important part of this defense. So I think there's an opportunity for them to continue building. I mean, it's basically the same guys. As you mentioned, they lost Cam Miller. They lost Jalen Kimber, who Kimber underappreciated in terms of what he was able to do. But I think they can be more aggressive. I'm curious to see how they are, utilized in what Jim Knowles does on defense versus what Tom Allen did. So I think you've got an opportunity to get more takeaways. I think you got an opportunity to do that, and you got to tackle if you're going to play cornerback at Penn State. I think this is a pretty decent tackling group. So I'm encouraged by what's out there. I really want to see how Davian Collins as Nate mentioned, take that next step, because we've seen it in practice. We've heard about it and all that stuff. Kind of took a back seat last year to those other guys. So I'm encouraged to see what we saw this spring. He is understated vocal, like very, very, very vocal.
But he's taken to Jim Knowles' defensive style of aggressive hand fighting more than any other corner, because he's backing it up not just with the hands but the mouth. Like he is psychologically attacking receivers on every one of those reps you just saw here on the YouTube channel. And
Jim Knowles' corner is obviously very good at doing that fighting and getting away with it. So
yeah, and I think to just quickly, because I want to get to the mailbag, but I don't think there's any position group that can improve more based on usage pattern than the cornerback room at Penn State because of Jim Knowles. Because if you look at the way they played last year, whether it was man or zone, their aggressive press tendencies was crazy. We talked a lot about Don Brown a couple of years ago at Michigan of just playing press man coverage and blitzing on every single play. There was a little bit of that with Tom Allen. It was just riding the line between reasonable and not when it came to, even if you're in a zone coverage and you're in a press look, if somebody gets behind you at the line of scrimmage, like that's a problem. And they might just have fewer of those this year. And that leads to better outcomes overall. Get to more of that later here. Nate, we got to get to the mailbag. I know you've got a good one-liner. We got 3 minutes. I'm not missing the mailbag again. I keep making this mistake of, putting it here at the end, and I want to get to people's thoughts. So here we get to the BWI mailbag on the BWI live show. Nate, the reason I wanted to get to the BWI mailbag is because I have a question for you. Nate, what's going on with Penn State hoops? Guys declaring for the draft, getting some guys from Europe, I think. Like, just give us a quick Penn State basketball update of good or bad. What's going on this summer with the Nittany Lions hoops?
Penn State's defense will be the most penalized group in the Big Ten this year. Anyway, what's going on with Penn State hoops? They got a, it's not even a transfer. They picked up an international guard, Mela Tunca, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's Turkish, 6'5", passes well, distributes well, can score at all three levels. That's important. Look, it's been a labor of love for the Penn State basketball staff this offseason. Really kind of not the way they would have drawn it up. Lost some battles in the transfer portal, lost some battles in the international market, and then lost Yannick Konen-Niederhauser. I think that's happened since the last time we talked. Yeah, actually, it definitely was. It was last Wednesday. So, look, Yannick is an NBA player. He will be even better next year than he is this year, but he decided to go to the draft, which is fine and certainly a proof of concept for Penn State's coaching, right? Their development. They want to be a developmental program. And they took a guy who was not that, right? Had a ton of athleticism, but was not kind of that refined piece that he has developed into. So that's a good thing in terms of a credit to Brent Scott, but also creates a major hole in size, right? You can't sugarcoat it. Mike Rhodes ended the last season talking about how the thing that he has realized, and it's been in focus over 2 years of playing Big Ten basketball, is just how important size is. Well,
it's like every coach comes and learns that at Penn State. They
it's
want
just different.
Yeah.
And there's just not that many humans out there who do that.
Yeah.
And so, when you lose a 7-foot guy who brings all of those traits to the table, it's, pretty much impossible to trade that and get the same thing out of the transfer portal or high school recruiting, what have you. And so the main focus, the thing that I think is, it gets boiled down for Penn State basketball this summer, is how important strength development is going to be. These guys have to transform their bodies over the next 8 weeks. So stuff gets kicked off on June 14th. Everybody gets in, and a big critical time for Penn State basketball.
Fitz, I'm going to come to you for this question, and we're going to actually get to you on a couple of these last here from the mailbag, which is over at bluewhiteillustrated.com on the message board. Greg's off this week, so I'm going to be doing more mailbag questions tomorrow, and of course, we'll have a couple sprinkled in on Thursday. But this one here from JMill987 says, I believe the playoff expansion is ruining fans' experience for college football. I could use some optimism towards the sport's future. Do you have any favorable opinions towards the playoff expansion, Fitz? Give him some hopium here.
I enjoyed it. Without knowing whatever the ruining the fans' experience of college football is. I don't understand. I'm personally not looking to see 16 teams in it, but that's not my decision.
Why?
What?
Why? Why not?
I like 12, but it's not a hill I want to die on. It's not a hill I want to climb. Like, this is not my bag here. So, no, I enjoy more football. We enjoyed our trip to, you got to go to Arizona and Miami. I know that part is tough in terms of like asking fans to turn around on a week's notice and travel to these places. I obviously sympathize with that, but good football, or more good football, is good. In my opinion, I'm sorry. Like, this is not playoff expansion and stadium talk and all that. That's just not my lane, and I stay out of it. So
I'll give a little, at least a positive spin on this. Last year, Penn State lost to Ohio State and made the college football playoff. Not only did they do that, they made the Big Ten championship game. If they had lost that game previously, they would not have made the college football playoff. So your fanatical desire to beat Ohio State and Michigan no longer aligns with the highest levels of success. Ohio State lost to Michigan and won the championship. So it is not as black or white, do or die on every single game, which, while it may feel like it's lowering the stakes of the regular season, it isn't, because home playoff seeding, buys, those things are all super important to getting the most favorable path towards a championship run. The NFL has both. And I don't understand why this is such a problem in the kind of development of the college football playoff model, that you can have a playoff. I agree with Fitz. I don't think 16 teams. I don't think we need to do more of that. But in the same sentence, I do think it's more equitable, and it's a little bit better for fans, where you don't have to have your season kill shotted in October when you lose one team. And so I view that as a positive. I understand.
I mean, my only thought on that is the conference championship game. Like, they showed last year that they don't mean anything. Like, when they seeded Penn State where they seeded Penn State, they showed last year that they do not mean anything, and that's an extra $2,000 if you're spending it to travel to Indianapolis. That's like all the economy, that stuff kind of matters. But it's also TV money. So again, our voices don't matter.
If you're the fan trying to go to the game, I completely sympathize with that. If you're the fan that's going to sit on the couch for all the games, you're going to go to maybe 2 regular season games, or you're not all in on all these things. I guess I'm thinking of the average fan's experience, where I think it's a net positive, but the travel, there's no way around that. It's brutal. I don't know how you can expect fans to consistently show up. Last one here And this one, I'm going to go to you again, Fitz. This one is up your lane. Poncho 570 wants to know, of the new May arrivals, who has already passed the looks test?
Yeah, I think 10 players showed up in May. Some really good prospects in that group. Going to go with Malachi Goodman, the offensive tackle. Going to go with Jeff Exenor, the wide receiver, and also Chaz Coleman, the defensive end. We saw Chaz at camp the other day, and he is huge. I never got a chance because of the way that his recruitment went. Never saw him at camp. Never saw him work out in person or anything like that. But he's standing with Cortez Harris and DeAndre Cook in this photo that you see on the YouTube. It's pretty good for a guy that just showed up. So I am irrationally high on Chaz Coleman. I think he can be a really, really good player for Penn State as he continues to develop in that defensive end group, which is also really good and really, really youthful as well. So I'm excited to see those guys. But those are a couple of guys that jump out to me. Chaz Coleman just seems like an NFL type body, an NFL type athlete that kind of makes sense for a place like Penn State that has produced those guys in that form. As elite pass rushers.
Yeah, we talked on the recruiting update about some of those NFL body types, some of those superstar players that are coming to Penn State this weekend from a profile perspective. Chaz Coleman, he's physically in that category, and so wow, to get that the way they did at the end of the recruiting cycle is just a huge win. Nate, last words are yours. We got to get going. What's coming up for you this week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com?
Guys, playoffs are about representation. That's it. That's the extent of the conversation. If you look across all the pro leagues, every league that has a standard that is wildly successful and popular, they start at 30% representation in the postseason. College football they've been stuck at 3% for forever, and now they've just expanded it to 12, which is still well under that 30%. That's it. I'm done. There will be basketball stuff, football stuff, all the stuff. I'm just saying.
It sounds like Nate has a lot to say, which there's an open invitation to come to the show tomorrow and answer some more questions and continue this conversation. There's an open slot. That's all I'm saying. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about it. That's your cue to come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. to see if Nate's going to be on the show. At this point, nobody knows. We'll talk to you then.